What was he like outside the ring, and did you have any premonitions that he may have had a dark side to him?
No. I'm going to tell you something, man. Chris Benoit, to me, I'll never forget it. After it happened, I was in my front yard mowing, and I was sitting there going, man, what a gentleman Chris was. Then it hit me. He's not a gentleman, he's a monster. Now, Devin, this is just totally my opinion. You know, I'm going to go by what everybody was saying. Texas, he was sending to Javo and stuff like that. All right, we know at that time, if you got sent to ECW from Raw to SmackDown, you were getting your notice, okay? And that's what it looked like for him. Now, we got to remember, too, Chris had 3, 4, or 5 tryouts with Vince and never made it. You know, now, let's just look at the circumstance. He's married another man's wife in the business, which is taboo. You know, he's about to lose his job. He's overextended himself. And the word depression is right there.
I think his wife had a restraining order against him at some point. There was some police stuff going on as well.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, there was some marital issues.
Well, see, think about that. So now here it is. You know you're about to lose your job. Your wife's threatened to leave you. You got a kid. You know, and Chris was a quiet guy. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But it was just too much for one person. And that's what, guys, it's just, the business does that to people. And you might not go out and commit mass murder, but you either overdose yourself from depression or you do things to yourself that affects your family, you lose your wife. Depression's linked there, guys.
Were you surprised about what happened with him?
Yeah, you know, all those years you know a guy, you know, and you know, you and I talking, you know, shoot, women get you pissed off. You know, I could see, you know, doing something with your wife, you get pissed off and get mad at her. But man, when you involve a kid, you know, there's something wrong there. You know, evil wrong. And you know, I never really I knew Chris when he was in WCW, but when he went up to WWF, I knew of Chris. I was around Chris for all those years, but I wasn't real good friends with, you know, Chris. So, you know, when you hear those things, guys, you know, and they did autopsy on him and said his brain was, you know, he had concussion issues, and they were the worst they've ever seen with football players and wrestlers. His brain deal was one of the worst. So, you know, I don't know. You know, you enhance it with these, you know, pills and other things going on. You never know what these guys are thinking.
Were you shocked when she was killed, I guess?
Oh, yeah, what, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, dude, that hurt right there. That hurt my heart right there. Yeah, dude, I was fucking devastated. I couldn't move. Vince got us all together. I'm in, what's that town in Texas on the fucking ocean? I forget I'm in Texas. And, you know, there's like 70 of us there. He sits us all down, and we knew it was going to be Benoit was dead. And then they hit us with the kid and fucking, and Nancy. And I just started bawling. I couldn't move. I was in that seat for another 3 hours. Everybody else was going or doing whatever. I was so devastated. I couldn't even move. Because our sons were the same age. My son, which son was that? Oh, that was Oliver. I had 5 sons, so I'm trying to think of like which one it was. And yeah, they were the same age, and they would bring them to shows, like the big shows. So fucking our kids would play together, and me and Nancy were super tight. So obviously she knew, because Chris had been in ECW for a long time, but me and him didn't talk much. You know, it's like, hey dude, how you doing? You know what I mean? But then I guess he figured out. Nancy told him how cool I was, and Chris buddied up to me like right away.
You know, at that period, I was so far removed from the wrestling business. I was living in the Keys. I had the gym. I hadn't gone out and done anything. And I remember Teddy Long calling me and telling me. And I was shocked. So I didn't know what was going on in their lives. So I can't surmise what happened. But it's a tragedy because, you know, it's a human life, and the people that are gone, can never come back. But the people that were left, Benoit's other children, Benoit's ex-wife, his mother, his father, Nancy's sister, who can't have children, that means her mother and father can never have grandkids. It's a tough thing.
And the horror that the poor child would have gone through that night is just unimaginable. That's why I don't understand the people that still stick up for him Because that's a pretty monstrous thing to do.
It's a monstrous thing to do, but some of us want to believe our heroes are heroes, not human beings, and anything can happen to people, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes people, we don't know if drugs were involved, alcohol, somebody snapped.
Well, we do know he was on a lot of drugs. He was on a lot of, because it was found in his house, and it was clear that he was on a lot of steroids by his body, the way his body looked, and by the stuff that was found in his house, I guess. What about all these fools out there that claim that you're somehow the true culprit?
Well, it's this way. Conspiracy theory people, and I believe there's some conspiracies, but because he was such a fabulous wrestler, you don't want to believe it. You know, you want to look at something else. And the one that gets me is, well, he's in the Church of Satan. Come on. I go to church. I'm a Catholic. I go to church on Sundays and discuss shit with my priest. But if they have to believe it, it doesn't bother me, because maybe that's how they sleep at night. Maybe they don't want to see their hero as what that happened. It's a horrible thing.
And as you also mentioned, you explained it well, but you were broken up where you weren't living together with for 8 months, and this death occurred years later, and why would you have anything to do with the kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's just one of those things. I hate to say it like this, but shit happens, and that's the quote. So, I think that he was one of those guys that he was so passionate about the business, almost to a fault. And I can tell you this, when I heard, because I was watching the pay-per-view live when all that happened, and as soon as I heard that he wasn't making the show because of a family emergency, and I went, what? And there was referee Wes Adams was down at the press box with me in Tampa. We were watching it at a bar there. He said, yeah, you know, he's not making it because of a family issue. And right away I went, something's wrong. Because Chris Benoit is one of those stubborn guys that, and he would if anybody ever missed a show because they were sick, or you know what I mean, he was one of those guys that he would show up just to be there, even if he was hurt. You know what I mean? He was such a guy that was so professional, and you know what I mean? So as soon as he told me that, and TJ goes, hey man, do you want to call him and make sure everything's okay? And I said, no, I'm not going to call him. He goes, well, why? I said, well, what's the point? And then he was like, you're not going to call him? I said, no. And right there, I knew there was something really, really wrong. And I'm not to say that I'm a psychic, but I have had certain sort of feelings, like stuff like that, where you know a guy, what he's kind of like. And Chris was kind of an odd person. And he was a very private person as well. I knew how much he cared about his family. Not that I predicted or knew that something like that happened, but I did know that there was a chance that something really traumatic happened for him not to show up. So I think Natty called Nancy and she didn't get a hold of her at all, left a message, and I kind of knew that. And then I went into, because I was in FCW at that time, went to wrestling practice that next day. Everyone was kind of asking me if they heard anything. I was going, no, I'm sure he's all right, but I'm thinking in my head, no, I know he's not all right. I know something's up. And then when I heard the news, it was really shocking and really, really traumatic, you know, because I had just seen him 2 weeks before that in Orlando. Me, him, and Chavo Guerrero, we were doing Hindu squats. They were filming SmackDown. Running the stairs, everything seemed to be fine. Well, actually, I'll take that back. One thing that was odd, because I said, hey, Chris, are you still doing because he was legendary for doing the 500 Hindu squats. I said, hey, you still doing your squats? He goes, no, man, I'm just not doing them. I don't know why. I just thought, okay, whatever. But maybe there was something going on with him that was making him not doing it, because whenever I'd see him, he would always have his little cup of, a styrofoam cup of coffee with the straw in it, and he'd be chewing it, be like, so you still doing your squats? Yeah, I am. How many? 500? Yeah, that's good. All right, you want to do some? Like he was like always kind of like that intense kind of guy. When he told me that, no. And then looking back on it, when I found out about all that, you know, and part of the big thing that I think about all that is you can blame steroids and stuff like that, but here's my opinion. One is if you go to a gym, and you probably see a lot of guys, people are going to look, oh, that guy's on steroids, that guy's on steroids. Okay, fair enough, we can judge. Are they on steroids? Maybe, yes, no, I don't know. Are they going home and killing their wife and son? No. Okay. So, can you ultimately blame steroids on the incident with Chris Benoit? I don't think it's fair to do that because, you know, and did concussions play a big role in it? I think so, probably. That's a good assessment. Do I think that when he was, at the time, he was taking a lot of antidepressants and stuff like that, a lot of depression because of the Eddie Guerrero death, the death of Big Boss Man, the death of Victor Blackcat? Yes, I do. And I've also always talked about the butterfly effect. You know, butterfly does this, and then all of a sudden, you know, a train hits something, boom. It could have been something as simple as that, but I think that he just, for him to have snapped like that must have been something. Nancy must have told him that she was leaving him, and from what I now know, it wasn't one of those deals where he accidentally choked her unconscious, because I can tell you, because I've choked a guy out on the street once, it takes, you have to have the choke in for, I think it's at least 2 minutes for that to happen. So you choke a girl, oh shit, I drop her, I wake her up. And from what I've heard is that the room was totally like a tornado hit it, and the way how he suffocated her and stuff makes me think, man, that is a absolutely horrible thing to do, and he should never be forgiven for anything like that.
I don't know how to this day, Devin, I don't know how people look at me with a straight face and have actually asked me, when is Benoit going to the Hall of Fame? I don't understand that. Probably after my cat Lily, when she goes to the Hall of Fame. Chris was a cool dude. He was the hardest worker I've ever been in the ring with. My favorite matches of all time. But much like I would probably react to Jeffrey Dahmer being in the ring with me, I have to now put Chris in a category that's untouchable. He's gulagged from WWE history forever. I can't see him ever getting back in. Until Daniel and Nancy come back, then I guess after that maybe he can come in. But it was a horrible tragedy. It sucked to happen. When it happened, it knocked us all on our asses. It was that's the single worst thing I saw happen to pro wrestling in the last, I don't know, since maybe ever. I don't know if anything was so shocking. It put a horrible stigma on pro wrestling. I mean, I still answer to this day, oh, you guys all do that, concussions, you do this, you do that, and he murdered his family because of wrestling, or just one thing after another. It was for a guy that was probably the top worker of his generation, who absolutely wanted to leave the business better than he found it. I think he did the exact opposite, and it sucks.
When I was taking a nap the day that we found out it all happened, and when my son woke me up, same house I live in right now, and when my son woke me up and said, Chris and Nancy and Daniel are dead, first thing that went through my head is, did he kill her or did she kill him? Didn't have a thought in the world that it was anything else. But if you look back at that tape, William Regal said, I don't want to talk about Chris the person, I want to talk Chris the wrestler, because he knew the same thing. He was in that clique. And it's sad. It's sad that they had very slowly taken themselves out of that group and start to really be private. Even to that group that we used to hang out with. They moved to a different house. None of us knew that. He had put up big gates. None of us knew that. The only one they felt comfortable talking to, Chris and Nancy, about any of their issues, was Johnny Grunge. Johnny Grunge was a fun guy, kind of a screw-up, did a lot of, drank a lot, got in trouble, stupid stuff. Nancy knew him from ECW. Chris knew him from WCW. And I think that Chris and Nancy were very concerned that people would think that there was something wrong with them because they were having problems. So they didn't want to share their problems with any of their friends. So the one guy they could both go to was Grunge, because Grunge was kind of the screw-up, fun guy, and he was never going to, think anything bad. I think anything bad about them, and he helped them a lot of time. And I truly believe, to this day, without a doubt in my mind, that if Johnny Grunge didn't die, that Chris and Nancy and Daniel would be alive. He was their only go-to outlet, and when he passed, they had nowhere else to go. And it's just really sad. What do you say about it? There are people that just lose, that are off a little bit, and they click. We hear about it every day, whether it's some guy shooting up a mall or all the crazy stories we hear. Unfortunately, I used to be friends with one of them.
And what do you say about all these idiots out there that I guess are just super Chris Benoit fans that claim that this is all a big conspiracy and Kevin Sullivan had something to do with this?
I say that they need to go back and find another conspiracy, because there's not a chance. There's more of a chance than Donald Trump is working for Vladimir Putin as we speak. Than that happened. It's absolutely. Look, I saw it with my own eyes. People saw it with their own eyes. The dysfunction that they had, pulling away, all the symptoms, like I told you. When I was informed what happened, I didn't have a doubt that one killed the other. My only sadness was that Daniel didn't survive. He didn't deserve it. And look, let's be honest. And Nancy was a great person and a good friend. Nancy was rough. Nancy was a tough girl. Nancy could go at it too. So it wasn't like Chris was beating his wife and Nancy's going. They were pulling back and forth at each other, and it was almost like who's going to flip, who's going to really go overboard over the edge first. And you hope that they would be able to make it work. But like I said, if grunge was alive, there's not a doubt in that night, whatever happened, Chris would have left, would have driven the grunges, and they would have talked. And then Chris would have come home, Nancy would have driven the grunges, they would have talked, and then 2 days later, all three of them would have laughed about it. Not a doubt in my mind.